Dear God, I'm ready for your help in removing from me the defects of character which I now realize are an obstacle to my recovery. Help me to continue being honest with myself and guide me towards spiritual and mental health. Amen. It is with much love and gratitude that the group welcomes Brenda J to come and share with us. Brenda, over to you.
God, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I will help of your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always. Hello, everyone. My name is Brenda. I'm a recovering alcoholic and a drug addict. I come bearing tidings of comfort and joy. I'm so incredibly happy to be with you today. I realize that it's some of your bedtime. So if you're going to be grouchy, we don't need it here. Okay. So just make sure you have extra time to sleep in the morning. I do appreciate the invitation. I've been sober by the grace of a God I didn't believe in since July 3rd of 1990. And I guess in a couple of weeks, sneak up on 35 years. Happy to report that I've never taken a vacation from Alcoholics Anonymous, from Cocaine's Anonymous, from Narcotics Anonymous, from Al-Anon. I have been a present in my seat every time that the folks at recovery have called roll. I don't have 1 year, 34 times. I have 34 different years. I remember visiting with my sponsor, and I said to him, I said, man, at this point I had 12 years sober, and I said to him, I said, they asked me to speak, and I don't know how to squeeze everything into 40 minutes, into half an hour. And he said, Brenda, if you're working the steps and living by these principles, you don't have to access the last 12 years, just the last 12 days or the last 12 hours. Before I go any further, I do thank those folks who invited me, for the invitation, and also for your patience in waiting for a spot on my calendar. Thank you for that. I just like to always start by offering a disclaimer. I have given myself permission to be imperfect and enough at the same time. I often need help maintaining a rational perspective. I reserve the right after all these years to make mistakes, to cry, to have problems, and to not always have my answers. And it is of far greater importance, rather than the time I've been here, but what I'm doing with that time now. You know, you've listened to speakers before, and like they start out with something, then they tell this incredible story, and then at the end they come back to it, and you're like, wow, that was fabulous. This is not going to be one of those talks. No. It's gonna be more like a potpourri, I say. I have surrendered myself to God, and so whatever comes out of my mouth is coming directly from the source. So if anything sounds like it might be interesting, anything sounds like you might have to work some steps or something, just write it down somewhere. It'll make sense in a moment. But as I was preparing for our time together, I read this. It says, the truth of who we are changes until we hear God say, you are the very root of me. And you know it in the soul of your soul. So I'm here today not to say the right thing. I am here to say the only thing. First, I get centered and quiet enough to hear the truth that lives in my core. And then I attempt to speak that as clearly as possible with grace and integrity. An authentic life spoken truthfully will cost me comfort and relationships and security. But it is so worth it, because it is the soul of my soul. So, in the whole time I've been sober, by the way, I don't know. I'm not your average bear. I don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I don't go to Narcotics Anonymous. I don't go anywhere and hear somebody like me. But we're not coming this way again. No matter how long I live, no matter how long you live, no matter how long we are in recovery, no matter how many steps, no matter how many conventions, this group of folks, 71 of us, we're never coming this way again. We will never be in each other's presence under the current circumstances of our lives. And the reason it's important for me to say that is because I used to want to come on Zoom meetings and play words with friends on the side. And then I used to come to Zoom meetings and watch television, whatever you got to do. But I just want you to know that I have it on good authority. That the book says that this is an adventure we shall not want to miss. In all the time I've been sober, when I hear somebody say they started using again, I ask them the same question. I ask them, tell me about the last amends on your 9-step list. And 100% of the time, that's a lot, over 34 years, 100% of the time, they will answer my question with, well, there were a couple I didn't get to. Or, I kind of lost place because I changed sponsors. What's been true about all of them is that they didn't finish all of the amends. But I've been here long enough to know the amends that they didn't finish wasn't because there was a problem with 9 or a problem with 8 or a problem with 7. It was because there was a problem with 6. People who tell me, oh, I'm so scared of doing the 2nd step, or I'm so scared of the 4th step. The one thing I know for sure is that you hadn't got to 6 yet. Because up until 6, it's been a group event. It's been a group activity. When you're new, the home group is so happy for you and everybody's cheering you on and they're clapping, and then you go through the struggles of finding a power and then making a decision. There's a lot of theater with that. And then, shut up, you get to write the columns of the people that messed up. That's my favorite. Oh, they said, May, write the column of everybody who's done something wrong. And I'm like, I'm going to need 7 pens. I'm on it though. So I did the column of everybody that had done something wrong. Then they sent me to the next column. The next column was, what did they do? Woo! I was loving it. 3rd column, shut up. 3rd column, how was I affected? I loved it. I'm like, I don't know why everybody complaining about the 4th step. Then there's a 4th column. And the 4th column, these people that have been my friends and have been helping now go into meddling because they want to know, what was my part? What was my mistake? What was my omission? What was my lack? In 4. Still, there's a party at 5. But 6. When I lose men or women that I sponsor, I lose them at step 6. Why? I lose them at step 6 because it is the first time that I receive an invitation to come into God's presence by myself. It's the first time that an invitation is extended by the steps. It says we were entirely ready. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Now, why did they go through the trouble of putting the word entirely and the word all in the same sentence, in the same step? Well, I have a sneaky suspicion that I may know why they did that, because they meant entirely and all. So look, I couldn't wait to get on here to tell you this part right here. This part right here. If I don't do step 6 with any kind of heart, if I don't do step 6, I can stay sober for 50 years. I can stay sober for 60 years, 70 years. I can stay sober all that time and never be free. Because if I don't do 6, nothing changes. Nothing changes. I can't tell you how many people I get to sponsor that they're like, well, I got through 5. And then what happened? I don't know. I got drunk. I don't know. I stopped going to meetings. I don't know what. 6, because this is it. If I don't do 6 with any kind of umph to it, nothing's ever going to be different. I'm going to continue to have the same relationships at the current dimensions for the rest of my life. I drank because I wanted more. Now I work the steps because I want more. And I wish I was quiet, and I wish my light was little, and I wish I wasn't this excited after 34 years. But I am truly, especially when talking about step 6 and 7 on a life and death errand. I am here on behalf of the people that love you, to whom your sobriety and recovery is paramount, to tell you that where I lose people is right here. It was 14 years between when Bill read. By the way, I have lost my voice on Zoom in my own house with no audience. I don't know. Anyway, Bill wrote the big book, and 14 years later wrote the 12 and 12. 14 years of experience, 14 days of thousands and thousands and thousands of alcoholics and their stories and their experiences. And after 14 years, wrote the 12 and 12. The information in the 12 and 12 over 6 and 7 is still so profound. Look, if I stay in recovery long enough, I'll hear everybody argue every point. And then they get sober, and next year they're arguing the other point. But, so you hear people in recovery talk about the fact that it's only the big book, that they don't work in the 12 and 12, that the 12 and 12 is what? You know what? My answer to that is, so what are you afraid of? Because I'm assuming you haven't read it. So the 12 and 12, in my experience, the 12 and 12 will take me to a different depth, to a different width, to a different length of experience, of capacity of what's available. I have a book, I have a poster in the other room of my home that says, if you want something you've never had, you're going to have to do something you've never done. I hated that. No, I want to do the minimal amount. I want to speak to my sponsor the minimal amount of time. I want to do service the minimal amount of time. I want to still be able to insist on having my way with everyone, but I don't call it that anymore. That is still the desire of my heart. If that is still the desire of my heart, that's why I can't get any more than I heard a guy say, Brenda, if you don't surrender whatever it is, if there's however many people are on this meeting, we all got one thing. If he said to me, he goes, Brenda, if you don't surrender that one thing, the way you feel right now is as good as you're ever going to feel. Part of why 6 is so hard is in the resistance. I'm afraid that if I turn these things, and by the way, definitions are hugely important. If I don't own a dictionary, I need one, right? But my definition for defect of character is anything that I will reach for when life pushes me besides the hand of God. So a character defect for me is anything that I reach for when life pushes up against me. I reach for something else besides the hand of God. That's a defect. I will reach for my opinion. I will reach for my judgment. I will reach for my pride. I will reach. I'm not going to read my entire 5th step to you, but you get the idea. I will reach for something else besides the hand of God, and that is what a character defect is for me. It is that thing that separates me. It is that thing that moves me further away from God than moving me toward God. And each one of us in our heads right now could give a list of the top 10. So, in the book when it's talking, God, it's hot in here. So in the book when it's talking about what I'm supposed to do as your speaker, it says we tell them what we were like, what happened, and what we're like today. So when people ask me to speak on a certain step or a certain topic, that's exactly what I do. So the way I looked before I did step 6 was that I wanted people to figure out what it is that I needed without me having to tell them. Because if they love me, they'd know. I wanted these 5 people to stop coming to group conscience because clearly they didn't even own a book, but they have opinions to be sharing on how we should all do this. Before I did 6, I was still in the company of my scarcity. I was still in the company of my judgment. I was still in the company of my own brokenness. I still had wounds that had been unattended. I had grievances that had been unspoken. And I had forgiveness as that thing I was never going to do. The part of why I didn't want to forgive people is because I decided that they didn't deserve it. That is such a huge obstacle to forgiveness. I didn't want to forgive them because they didn't deserve it. I remember sometime in recovery, I said to God, hey, look, I go to all these meetings. I sponsor all these people. I'm the AA poster child. I go to da-da-da-da, and I don't feel like I'm getting what I deserve. And God said to me, well, on the bright side, though, Brenda, you're not getting what you deserve either. Oh, I see what you did there with the emphasis. If I don't forgive you, I'm going to have to stay with you spiritually 24 hours a day, every day of the year, year after year, decade after decade, lifetime after lifetime. If I don't forgive you. Some people I forgave just to get away from them. I have another picture in the other room that says, sometimes the fear won't go away, so you'll have to do it afraid. And I'm here to tell you that I have done it afraid. I couldn't get any distance between me and my shortcomings. I couldn't get any distance because the minute that somebody crossed me, I only knew how to reach for the things that were familiar. Compassion, self-searching, patience, wholeness, hope, joy. Those were not the things I knew to reach for. And so the quality of my life kept smelling like something that had gone bad. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying anything about your cleanliness, but y'all have gone to the refrigerator once or twice and went, what in the fresh hell is that smell? So I think that happens to me spiritually. Walking around, being all sober. Something stinks. And it's usually the work of 6. And so then the question becomes, how do I do it? I never even bothered to ask the question because I knew I wasn't gonna do it. But I've already shared with you what my life looked like before. My sponsor asked me one time, she said, Brenda, what are the true desires of your heart? What do you really, really want? And I closed my eyes and then I opened them immediately and I said, I know because I was irritable, restless, and discontented. She's like, what do you want? And I said to her, I want to be closer to God. She starts laughing, throws her head back, and as she's laughing hysterically, I'm writing her name down for my next inventory. She said, Brenda, you are already at the end of God's breath, and God is already at the end of yours. Now the question becomes, how do I go from being that person I described that had to be first, that had to be the loudest, that had to be right, they had to be left? How do I go from being that person to a person that knows to reach for love? To a person that needs to help you more than I need to judge you. To a person that wants to include everybody. To a person that continues to make room. That continues to give the message of there's enough room for everybody in recovery. If you look like me, if you look different, if you sound like me, if you love like me, it doesn't matter. There is room here. That is my message. I will give it until the day I die. Listen, I don't know how I'm going to die. It's going to be a while, so don't get too excited. But I do know one thing about that moment, is that they're going to be able to say today, holy God, that woman Brenda J. from Texas finally moved on to the next experiment. And they're going to say how she died. And the person's going to look back and go, I don't know, but I can guarantee you she was surrendered. I don't know if you're familiar with the GPS on the car. So apparently there's this little person in your car and you tell it, I'm starting at this point and I want to go to this point. And then they spit out directions on how best to get there. Well, my problem when I first started working with GPS, I'm like, that thing does not know what it is doing. No, that's not the way. I could take a shortcut over there and over there and over there. And then I'd turn it off and I just take my shortcut and realize, oh, would I close that road? Yikes. That's probably why that's probably why the GPS wanted me to go the other way. Now, I wish I could tell you that I had done that one time. Steps are like that. Life is like that. God will say to me, hey, Brenda, you know that woman that lied to you? Regrettably, I'm in enough relationships that I have to answer that question with which one? And when I asked her, look, I don't care what the truth is. I just care that it is told. My non-negotiable is dishonesty. And so she told me that she had lied. And then I said, how long have you been lying about this? And she said, the whole time. And then God said, I want you to forgive her. I'm like, no. And then God says, Brenda, if you want what's in 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12, you must. You must forgive her. Then I look at God and go, I don't have the power or the want to. And then God says, well, if you hand it to me, I could get us there. And that's what happened. I couldn't forgive her on my own accord because she had been wrongerous. That may not be a word. Remember the dictionary I mentioned earlier? Because she had been wrongerous than me. And as long as I remember, I took my 9-step list to my sponsor to figure out how to make amends. And I said, well, as I don't owe her no amends. I don't owe this person no amends. And now she'd listened to my 4th and 5th, so she knew better than she said, how did you come to figure out that you didn't owe anybody amends? I said, well, okay, so they were 80% wrong. And I was 40% wrong, so I subtracted my 40 from their 80. They owe 40, I owe nothing. And then my sponsor said, what? Well, I thought she didn't hear me, so they were 80% wrong. She said, who told you to do that? I tried to think real fast of the name of a person I didn't like at the A of A, so I could say Marsha. Marsha told me to do that. Shut up. Then Marsha got in trouble with my sponsor. Then I got in trouble. But I digress. The book says that to conclude that other people had wronged us was as far as many of us had gotten. Everything, entirely all, everything, entirely all that the 6th step calls me to is only because God wants more for me than I want for me. There's a story of a little boy, and he was going to pitch at the big important game the next day, and he had a toothache at night. And it hurt, and finally he went in and asked his mom, and she put a little a Tylenol or something on it, and he went out and pitched, and he messed up, and they lost the game. And he was crying after, and he's like, Mom, my tooth hurts really bad. And she's like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me last night that it hurt that bad? He said, because I just wanted to pitch in the game, and you would have wanted me to go to the doctor and then to go see the dentist and for me to have perfect dental health, and I just wanted to pitch. I'm the same way with God. I will only give him enough to make him think that he's helping. Because I don't want to have perfect spiritual health. I just want to get along well enough to get what I want tomorrow. I'm not lying, man. Like, this is it. I used to have a sponsor that said, you can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up. So I can pretend to do 6, but in a minute, everybody's going to be able to tell that I haven't done 6. Why? How will they know? The evidence for not doing step 6 is one of the few steps where the evidence is on the outside. A bunch of the steps, when I don't do them, the evidence is on the inside. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I'm pissed off. I'm mad at everybody. I don't want to be with people. Like, internally, it's the expression of the fact that I haven't done the work. But step 6 shows itself on the outside. And the reason you know that is because if I'm new to recovery and I lock my keys in the car and I throw a fit, and I'm like, I'm just cussing every day. And you should be able to watch that and go, my goodness, does she have a book? Has she opened it? Who is her sponsor? Back in the day when you used to act bad, nobody brought it to your attention. They did, however, go visit with your sponsor, and then your sponsor brought it to your attention. Oh, the good old days. Now, if it's 5 years later and I lock the keys in the car and I react the same way, we now have evidence that I haven't done 6. If all I can do is slam the door and cuss at you when we disagree, and 10 years sober and 15 years sober and 20 years sober, that is still what I know how to do. There is one big old problem with that. That was impressive. I took out all the cuss words in my head. I'm going to need a minute. Women ask me all the time, I wish I knew if he was going to turn out to be a good guy. I wish I knew how he was going to treat me in 5 or 10 years. I'm like, well, I can tell you right now if you want. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So pay attention to when he or she, pay attention to when they make a mistake. Pay attention to what they do and the things they say. And then pay attention. Look, I'm convinced you don't really know anybody until the first time they don't get what they want. There's 10 years of meditation in that last statement. I don't think you really know people until the first time they don't get what they want. Anyway, so I say to them, pay attention when they lose something, pay attention when they break something, pay attention, because the way they treat themselves now will be how they treat you in the future, because that's the best they have. Did you know that every seed, so think a minute, every seed, tomato seed, flower seed, every kind of seed consents to open in the dark to a process it doesn't understand? I have a teacher who teaches me that. Every seed consents to opening in the dark. Step 6, for me, in my experience, is that opening in the dark. It's all about the perception. Am I being buried or am I being planted? Assume positive intent. Assume positive intent, Brenda. Whether I'm being buried or planted just has to do with how I see things. And the way I see things has to do with my spiritual condition. And my spiritual condition has to do with whether or not I have the capacity and the willingness and the messiness and the heart for doing step 6. I can't tell you how important. And so, look, for the last 20 years of my life, when my parents were living, I spent 20 years brokering peace with my brothers and sisters, with them, with each other. I have 6 sisters and at that time 2 brothers. And for 20 years, I kept the peace. I kept the peace because my parents asked me to. And so I'd go speak with one of them and ask them for kindness. And then I would go speak to the other one and ask them for kindness. And for 20 years, I continued to bring us all to the table, sober. It was a day or 2 before my mom died. By this time, I have tons of grown nephews who are now grown people who have wives and husbands and children of their own. And everybody was over at my mom's house because she was in her last few days. And I heard them arguing. I knew they were drunk. So I got up from the chair next to my mom's bed and I walked out into the living room. And in my best teacher voice, I said, outside right now. And we all went outside. And I said to them, whatever this is right here, in a couple of days, grandma's still going to die. Your mom and your dad are still going to lose their mom. And they're going to need you in ways that you are not ready for. And I think that your drinking is that you're trying to tell them that. But I want you to know that that is all still going to happen. After mom dies, because my father had already passed, I said, after mom dies, you can all go to whatever corner of the earth. Whatever corner of the earth you wish to inhabit. You never have to see each other. You never have to talk to each other again. But we are going to finish well. And then I said to them, as God is my witness, I will have you all arrested. I will have you all arrested in jail so that the rest of us that are not in jail can finish this. But we are going to do this. My dad he died on Christmas Eve of 2004, and my mother died in December 4 years later in 2008. So they've been gone all this time. So have some of my brothers and sisters. And I want you to know that I spent the first few years after that happened, I spent the first few years trying to broker that peace. And then one day I heard God say to me, Brenda, this exercise has cost you 20 years. The idea of being able to go inhabit whatever corner of the earth and never see each other or speak to each other, that was the gift for you. Since then, my brother died. And that was the last time I saw the majority of my brothers and sisters. The beautiful thing is that they'll send a message when they're ill, when they're hospitalized, when something in their life is broken. They'll send a message and ask for my prayers. I was just working at a job. I'm a school teacher. I teach 12-year-olds math. Because when I got sober, God asked, what do you want? And I said, I don't want to be a teacher and I don't want to teach math. I had taught for 10 years and then I left teaching to go work in corporate America. And then kids started picking up guns to talk at school. And I thought that those of us that could teach them should probably go back and get some of those kids. So I came back to teaching and I just finished my 8th year back. So I have 18 years into this. But this year I had to ask for a transfer because I've spent the last 8 years at the job I had. Trying to fix the fact that I was a couple shades too dark. For some of the people that work there. And so I asked for a transfer. And the principal said, I'll have some say in where you wind up. Do you have any preferences? Now they had taken all of the immigrant children, that's who I teach, all the kids who were first time to the U.S. from anywhere. And they moved all those kids to a campus by themselves last year. And so this one year I taught just general ed. So anyway, the principal asked me if I have any preferences. And I said, no matter what, under no circumstances do I want to go to this one particular school. Other than that, I don't care. So I get my transfer papers and it says, we've approved your transfer and you've been assigned to the one school that I asked the principal not to send me to. Which also happened to be the one school I wanted to go to really badly. See what I did there? I have a sister younger than me who's in a bad way financially. And I sent her a credit card with her name on it and I said, there's $1,000 on it. And she very quickly charged $1,200. I have a nephew who has had diabetes his whole life, and about 2 years ago they started chopping off toes on his feet, and he just recently came through another surgery. And I said to him, I said, "Hey, what do we have to do so we're not repeating this again?" And he says, "I need the shoes. There's these shoes and I need them and I don't have them, and then my cut gets infected or whatever." And I said, "All right, I'm going to get you the shoes." I have no idea how we're going to get. I said, "I'll get you the shoes." Well, and I'm like, "God, we're going to need shoes." And I said, "Go to get fitted, tell them about your insurance, and then just tell me how much it is, and we're going to get you the shoes." And he went and had his appointment, and they fitted him, and he comes back and says, "The insurance pays 100% of the shoes." And my dog, I got her because I rescued her, and I went to pick her up. When I divorced my wife, she took my dog. Anyway, so I go get this other dog, and she only knows how to pee and poop in the house because they never let her out. So she doesn't really get that she's supposed to do that outdoors. So I'm explaining to her in English and Spanish in case she's bilingual, but she's not at all interested. She's just wagging her tail and just hugging me and hi. And I'm like, "Hey, here's the pee-pee pad and then here's your pee. What are we doing? You're better than that." And she goes and she puts herself in her crate. The door's open. She puts herself in her crate and then she sits there for whatever she's decided is a good amount of time, and then she lets herself out again. What the hell does all this have to do with step 6 and 7? There's no way to do it. There's no way to forgive this woman who lied intentionally. I have a friend who says, "Brenda, she broke your heart and clarified your vision. Take the win." There's no way to hold my mother and father's hand. There's no way to finally get to a place where I can walk away from my brothers and sisters because they've left, because I left, because I did my time. There's no way to ask for a transfer. There's no way to speak truth to that. There's no way to say, "I'm done with that. I didn't come back for this." There's no way to love my dog when she doesn't understand the pee thing. If I haven't done step 6, listen, my sponsor says if we do all the even stepped numbers, if we do all the even ones, the odd ones take care of themselves, because after all that work in the 6th step, to humbly ask God to take it from me. And so what that looks like is that I'll say to God, I know that I will oftentimes reach for fear instead of you. I need your help. God, I know that I oftentimes will reach for a story in the past because I lack the courage to live in the future. I need your help with that. God, I know that oftentimes I decide not to come close to them because I don't want them to hurt me anymore. And I need your help with that. God, take away from me all the things that make me come up short. When I do step 7, it feels like everything I'm giving God is broken. It feels like I'm handed into it in like 5 pieces, and it was in 1 piece a minute ago. And you know what God does when I give him this thing, this precious, beautiful, breathtaking thing that I broke, that God broke somewhere, and I hand it back to him in 5 pieces. You know what God does? God takes all those 5 pieces and he goes, "Oh, they're precious." I'm like, "I broke it." He said, "I know, but then you gave it to me." I'm going to read something to you, and then I'm going to be done. I'm sorry. I don't know what time it is or anything. I don't even think I can read. This is a story from one of the first women in recovery. And she says, the last 15 years, and for me, the last 34 years, the last 34 years of my life have been rich and meaningful. I have had my share of problems, heartaches, and disappointments. Because this is life. But also, I have known a great deal of joy and a peace that is that handmaiden of an inner freedom. I have a wealth of friends, and with my AA friends, an unusual quality of fellowship. For to these people I am truly related, first through mutual pain and despair, and then through mutual objectives and a newfound faith and hope. And as the years go by, working together, sharing our experiences with one another, and also sharing a mutual trust, understanding, and love without strings, without obligations, we acquire relationships that are unique and priceless. There is no more aloneness, with that awful ache so deep in the heart of every alcoholic that nothing before now could ever reach it. That loneliness is gone and need never return. Now there is a sense of belonging. There's a sense of freedom, and there's a sense of love. In return for a bottle and a hangover, we have been given the keys of the kingdom. I pray that all of God's love is mine. I pray that all of God's love is yours. I pray that all of God's love is with us all, this God or something better. That's it. Thank you.
Brenda, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your share. Sister, you were heard. Let's all take a moment. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. I'd like to now hand back to Brenda to take us out with prayer or reading of your choice, please.
After a moment of silence, we'd like to do the we version of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.